Imagine calling 911 because a wild bison wouldn't let you tuck it in with a blanket, or demanding police arrest a pilot for grand theft because the plane left exactly on time. These are real, verified reports from travelers who completely lost their minds. And we are counting down the 49 most insane, jaw-dropping moments where vacation vibes turned into total humiliation. Smash that subscribe button so you never end up on this list, hit like if you have common sense, and let's get into the absolute chaos. 1. A frantic middle-aged tourist in a city square dialed 911 with absolute panic in her voice. She screamed at the operator that a man standing on a box had not moved a muscle in 2 hours and must be dead standing up. The operator tried to calm her down, but the woman insisted she watched him while eating lunch, and his skin was turning silver. When police finally arrived to check the stiff body, the corpse suddenly sneezed and bowed to the crowd. The woman screamed so loud she dropped her gelato on a pigeon. She was totally humiliated to learn that living statues are actually a thing. 2. An angry businessman stormed into the hotel lobby and immediately called 911 to report a hostage situation. He told the dispatcher he had been trapped inside the glass entryway for 20 minutes, and the hotel was refusing to let him leave. The dispatcher asked if the doors were locked or blocked. The man shouted that he was pushing with all his might and nothing was happening. A bellhop watched this struggle for a while before walking over, and he gently pulled the door open while making eye contact. The businessman froze in silence. He hung up the phone and walked out without saying a word to anyone. 3. A wealthy vacationer stood at the boarding gate with her expensive bags and shrieked into her phone. She demanded that officers immediately arrest the pilot of Flight 702 for grand theft auto. The confused dispatcher asked if someone stole her car. The woman screamed that the pilot stole the entire airplane because it left the gate 10 minutes ago without her. She insisted that since she bought a ticket, she owned a piece of that plane. Security had to gently explain that being late for a flight is not a federal crime. The woman sat on the floor and cried while the plane flew halfway to Florida without her. 4. A terrified tourist in the New York City subway called emergency services with tears running down his face. He told the operator he was trapped in a metal prison and could not feel his legs. Rescue units rushed to the scene thinking a building had collapsed on someone. They arrived to find a heavyset man wedged tight inside a metal turnstile. He had tried to squeeze through with a massive backpack and got stuck at the hips. New Yorkers were jumping over the turnstile and laughing at him while he sobbed. Firefighters eventually had to use a gallon of vegetable oil to slide him out. The man vowed to only take taxis forever. 5. A hungry traveler in a rental car blocked the entire drive-through line and dialed 911 in a total rage. He reported a theft in progress and demanded an officer arrive with lights and sirens. The dispatcher asked what was stolen and if the suspect was armed. The man screamed that the employees forgot his mild sauce packets and refused to open the window again. He claimed his tacos were legally incomplete without the sauce, and he was the victim of a scam. Police arrived and forced him to move his car immediately. The man was issued a heavy ticket for misusing emergency services, which cost way more than a taco. 6. A search and rescue team spent 24 hours looking for a lost hiker on a dangerous mountain trail. They called his cell phone 12 different times to locate him, but he never picked up once. The hiker finally walked into camp the next day perfectly fine and confused by the commotion. When the angry sheriff asked why he ignored their calls, the hiker shrugged his shoulders. He said he saw an unknown number on his screen and assumed it was a telemarketer trying to sell him car insurance. The rescue team stood there in silence. They could not believe this man almost died because he was too annoyed to answer the phone. 7. A frantic driver called 911 while water rapidly filled up the cabin of his sedan. He screamed that his car was sinking and he was going to drown in the dark. The operator asked how he ended up in a body of water. The man yelled that his navigation app told him to turn left, and he simply followed orders. He had driven directly down a boat launch ramp and into a freezing lake because the robot voice said it was a road. A fisherman nearby watched the whole thing and just shook his head. The driver was rescued, but he still blamed the satellite for trying to kill him. 8. A solo traveler staying in a historic hotel whispered into the phone with pure terror in her voice. She told the police there was a dark figure standing in her closet watching her sleep. She was hiding under the covers and begged them to kick down the door before she was murdered. Officers arrived with guns drawn and stormed into the room ready for a fight. They checked the closet and found nothing but an antique full-length mirror. The woman had been staring at her own reflection in the dark for an hour. The officers tried not to laugh while the woman packed her bags and checked out immediately. 9. A young woman at the airport security checkpoint dialed emergency services screaming about an armed robbery. She told the dispatcher that uniformed men were seizing her expensive property and she was helpless to stop them. Police rushed to the terminal expecting a bank heist or a hostage situation. They found the woman crying over a bottle of luxury conditioner in a trash bin. The TSA agent explained that the bottle was too large and had to be thrown away. The woman insisted it cost $50, and that was grand larceny. The police threatened to arrest her if she did not board her plane. She left crying about her dry hair. 10. A confused American tourist in Europe called the local police to report a massive banking fraud. He stood in front of an ATM and shouted that the machine was spitting out colorful Monopoly money. He told the officer he requested $200, but got pink and blue paper instead. The operator tried to explain that other countries use different currency than the United States. The tourist refused to believe it and demanded real green cash immediately. A line of locals formed behind him and started yelling at him to move. He eventually threw the colorful bills on the ground in protest. A happy stranger picked them up and bought lunch. 11. A hungry trucker at a desolate rest stop called 911 in a fury. He reported an active robbery taking place right in front of his eyes. The dispatcher asked for a description of the suspect and if they had a weapon. The man screamed that the thief was a glass box and it stole his dollar bill. A bag of spicy chips was dangling on the metal coil and refused to drop down. He demanded an officer come shoot the glass or arrest the machine immediately. The dispatcher sighed and told him to shake it. The man refused because he might break a nail. He stood there and starved. 12. A suburban family called for immediate air rescue from the middle of a farm field. The father screamed that the sun was going down and they were trapped in a labyrinth. He was convinced they would starve to death or be eaten by wild coyotes. The operator asked if they were injured or in danger. The dad yelled that they had been walking in circles for 10 whole minutes. It was actually a corn maze designed for little children. A teenager employee walked in and led them out in 30 seconds flat. The dad demanded a refund for his emotional trauma. The mom pretended not to know him. 13. A terrified camper deep in the woods whispered into his phone about an alien invasion. He reported seeing a fleet of perfectly straight lights moving silently across the night sky. And he told the operator that the mothership was organizing a strike on planet Earth. He was ready to fight the Martians with his small fishing knife. The operator checked the news and laughed out loud. It was actually a train of Starlink satellites launching into orbit. The camper refused to believe it was internet from space. He packed his tent and drove home immediately. He slept in his basement for a week to hide from the probes. 14. A wealthy American tourist in a fancy European hotel called the police shivering violently. She claimed the hotel management was trying to freeze her to death in her sleep. She screamed that the thermostat was broken and stuck on 20 degrees. She thought it was 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is below freezing. The confused receptionist tried to explain that 20 Celsius is actually room temperature. The woman refused to listen and wore her fur coat to bed. She demanded the police arrest the front desk for attempted murder. The officers never showed up. She sweated through her expensive pajamas all night long. 15. A business traveler in a suit dialed 911 while sprinting across the airport tarmac. He was out of breath and shouting that the airline was kidnapping him. He told the dispatcher that the jet bridge was moving too slow, so he opened the emergency door. He jumped down to the concrete and ran toward the plane engines. Ground crew tackled him immediately. before he got sucked into a turbine. He screamed that he had a meeting and they were delaying justice. The police arrested him on the spot, and he missed his meeting and is now on the no-fly list forever. 16. A sobbing teenager called emergency services from her car while driving in circles. She was hyperventilating and told the operator she was trapped in a vortex. She had entered a roundabout traffic circle and was too terrified to merge out. She'd been driving in the loop for 45 minutes straight. Other drivers were honking and taking videos of her crying face. The operator had to gently talk her through using her blinker. She finally exited the circle and pulled over to vomit. She promised to never drive in Europe again. Her dad had to come pick up the car. 17. A confused renter called the agency and then the police to report a defective vehicle. He claimed the car was possessed and screamed in agony whenever he drove it. He said he was going 60 miles per hour on the highway. The engine was making a sound like a dying animal and shaking violently. The officer asked if he had shifted gears yet. The man asked what a gear was. He had been driving a manual transmission in first gear for 50 miles. The engine blew up 5 miles later. The rental company charged him for the entire car. He still thinks it was a ghost. 18. A solo camper called 911 in the middle of the night screaming for help. He was trapped inside a mummy sleeping bag, and the zipper was totally jammed. The worst part was that he really needed to use the bathroom immediately. He was rolling around on the tent floor like a worm in distress. He begged the dispatcher to send a ranger with a knife to cut him free. The dispatcher told him to just wiggle his arms out the top, and he tried it and popped right out. He felt like a complete idiot. He peed behind a tree and went back to sleep. 19. A well-meaning animal lover called the park rangers in a total panic. She reported a severe case of animal cruelty right by the main road. She saw a massive bison standing in the snow and he looked shivering cold. She tried to approach the 2,000-pound beast to put a towel on its back. The bison did not want a towel and chased her back to her car. She screamed that the rangers were negligent for not dressing the animals. The ranger explained that bison have fur for a reason. She wrote a bad review for the national park. The bison is still naked today. 20. A startled traveler in a high-tech Tokyo bathroom called for immediate backup. He was screaming that the toilet had gone rogue and was attacking him. Honey, he had pressed a button he did not understand and water was shooting everywhere. He claimed the machine was trying to drown him in the stall. The water pressure was set to max, and he could not find the off switch. He was soaked from head to toe in toilet water. The hotel staff had to unlock the door and turn it off. He walked through the lobby dripping wet. He used the stairs to avoid people. He never used a bidet again. 21. A dizzy passenger called 911 while lying flat on her back. She reported that the airport was broken and trying to kill her. She had stepped onto a moving walkway and immediately fell over. She claimed the floor was moving too fast and made her lose her balance. The operator asked if she was drunk or injured. She said she was sober, but the walkway was clearly a death trap. She demanded they turn it off so she could stand up. A little kid walked past her and laughed. She crawled to the end on her hands and knees. 22. A confused young man called the local police station to ask a legal question. He had just purchased a bag of marijuana legally in one state. He wanted to know if it was legal enough to cross the border. The dispatcher told him that federal law says absolutely not. The man thanked the officer and then asked if he could just hide it. The officer told him that was a terrible idea. The man hung up and drove across the line anyway. He was pulled over 5 minutes later for speeding. The officer smelled the weed immediately. 23. A frantic hotel guest called 911, screaming that his luxury car was stolen. He accused the valet parking attendant of driving off with his vehicle. He demanded the police arrest the entire staff for grand theft auto. The dispatcher checked the logs and asked if he self-parked. The man went silent for a very long time. He remembered parking in the garage to save $20. He found his car exactly where he left it. He tried to apologize to the valet, but they banned him. He had to carry his own bags out. 24. A drunk driver called 911 to report a hit-and-run accident. He was slurring his words and sounded extremely upset about the damage. He told the operator that someone smashed into his car and drove away. The operator asked for his location and license plate number. He read the plate of the car he was currently driving, and the operator realized the plate matched a parked car that was just hit. The man had actually hit a parked car and then reported himself. Police arrived and arrested him for driving under the influence. He is still confused about who hit who. 25. A concerned park visitor called the ranger station to report a plumbing emergency. She said there was a massive burst pipe shooting water into the air. She insisted that gallons of water were being wasted and it needed to be fixed. The ranger asked where she was located in the park. She said she was standing right in front of Old Faithful. The ranger explained that it is a natural geyser and not a broken pipe. She argued that no pipe should leak that much water. She demanded a refund for the waste of resources. The geyser erupted again while she was complaining. 26. An angry hotel guest called the police to report a case of fraud. She had paid extra money for a room with a garden view. She looked out the window and saw only a parking lot. She claimed the hotel was scamming her and refused to listen to reason. The officer asked if she was looking out her bedroom window. She said she was looking out the window in the hallway. She went back to her room and opened the curtains. There was a beautiful garden right outside. She hung up the phone without saying sorry. The front desk staff laughed at her all week. 27. A terrified airline passenger called 911 from his seat on the plane. He whispered that there was a bomb on board, and he was the one who said it. He had made a sarcastic joke to a flight attendant and immediately regretted it. He wanted to turn himself in before the plane took off. Security was already walking down the aisle to remove him. The other passengers booed him as he was escorted off. He spent the night in a holding cell explaining his bad humor. He is now banned from that airline for life. His friends still make fun of him. 28. A disappointed tourist called emergency services from the base of the Statue of Liberty. She wanted to report the National Monument for false advertising to the public. She had traveled all the way there to climb up to the torch. The park ranger told her the torch has been closed since 1916. She screamed that the website did not say that explicitly enough. She demanded a helicopter take her to the top immediately. The operator told her that was not an emergency. She stood there and pouted like a toddler. She took a selfie and left angry. 29. A crying bride to be called 911 from inside a hair salon. She reported a disfigurement and demanded the stylist be arrested for assault. She claimed her bangs were cut way too short for her wedding day. The dispatcher asked if she was bleeding or in physical pain. She said her heart was broken and her life was ruined. The police told her a bad haircut is not a crime. She refused to pay and sat in the chair, sobbing. The stylist offered her a hat. She threw the hat across the room. She got married with bad bangs. 30. A bored emergency dispatcher listened to 20 minutes of muffled karaoke singing. A traveler had put their phone in a tight pocket and accidentally dialed 911. The operator could hear the entire bar singing Sweet Caroline at the top of their lungs. They tried to shout over the music, but nobody could hear them. Police were sent to the location just in case of trouble. They found a room full of happy drunks having a great time. The traveler was embarrassed when the officer tapped his shoulder. He bought the officer a soda to apologize. 31. A city slicker camping for the very first time called 911 in absolute terror. He whispered to the operator that his tent was surrounded by radioactive laser bugs. He claimed the insects were glowing neon green and signaling an attack. The operator asked if he had ever seen a firefly before in his life. The man screamed that bugs do not have batteries, and this was a government experiment. He swatted at the air until he accidentally collapsed his entire tent. His friends laughed so hard they could not breathe. He slept in the car with the windows rolled up tight. The Rangers still tell this story at the campfire. 32. A frantic husband in a hotel room called 911 with a digital emergency. He was breathing heavy and told the dispatcher he was locked out of the television. He had accidentally rented an adult movie and could not turn it off. His wife was coming back from the pool in exactly 2 minutes. He begged the police to cut the power to the entire building immediately. The dispatcher told him to just unplug the television from the wall. He yanked the cord so hard, he pulled the socket out. His wife walked in and asked why he was sweating. He said he was just exercising. 33. Showed an angry passenger connected to the airplane Wi-Fi just to call 911. She reported a physical assault taking place at 30,000 feet in the air. The dispatcher asked if she was bleeding or in immediate danger from a weapon. The woman screamed that the man in front of her reclined his seat 1 inch. She claimed her knees were being crushed, and her personal space was violated. The flight attendants tried to calm her down, but she demanded an arrest. The pilot threatened to land the plane early if she did not stop. She sat in silence for 3 hours. Everyone clapped when she left. 34. A suspicious tourist in a yellow taxi dialed emergency services from the back seat. He whispered that the driver was rigging the meter to steal all his money. And he told the operator the numbers were climbing way too fast for the distance traveled. The operator asked if they were currently moving or sitting in traffic. The man said they had been stuck in gridlock for 20 minutes. The operator explained that time is money in a taxi cab. The man refused to pay the extra fee and locked the doors. The driver drove him straight to the police station. He had to pay the fare plus a fine. 35. A furious food critic from New York called the Chicago Police Department to report fraud. He was standing outside a famous pizzeria and shouting about a culinary crime. He told the officer he ordered a pizza, but was served a hot casserole instead. He claimed the crust was too thick and the sauce was on top. The officer asked if he knew what deep dish pizza was. The man insisted that pizza must be thin and foldable by law. The officer told him to eat it with a fork and knife. The man threw the slice on the sidewalk. A pigeon ate it and looked very happy. 36. A grumpy vacationer in a rental home called 911 to file a noise complaint. He yelled that a loud siren had just driven past his house and woke him up. He demanded the police find the vehicle and give the driver a ticket. The dispatcher asked what kind of siren he heard outside the window. The man described a police car with flashing blue and red lights on top. The dispatcher explained that emergency vehicles are allowed to make noise during emergencies. The man said he was on vacation and deserved peace. The dispatcher hung up the phone. The man wrote a bad review online. 37. A paranoid hiker in a deep canyon called for help because she was being stalked. She told the ranger that a voice was mocking everything she said from the rocks. She would shout hello, and the voice would shout hello back a second later. She was terrified that a maniac was hiding in the bushes waiting to grab her. The ranger asked if she knew how an echo works in a canyon. She paused for a long time and tested it again. She felt incredibly stupid and apologized to the rocks. The ranger told her to buy a map. She walked back to her car in silence. 38. A starving guest in a high-rise hotel called 911 to report neglect. He claimed he was slowly dying of hunger because nobody had brought him food. He told the police that room service had not knocked on his door for 2 days. The dispatcher called the front desk to investigate the situation for the man. The hotel manager explained that the guest had left the Do Not Disturb sign on. The staff is not allowed to knock when that sign is on the handle. The man looked at the door and saw the red tag. He ordered a pizza and ate it in shame. 39. A nervous flyer called airport security from the gate area with an urgent tip. He whispered that the pilot of his flight was stumbling and clearly intoxicated. He saw the captain walking down the jet bridge with a noticeable wobble. Police intercepted the pilot right before takeoff to perform a breathalyzer test. The pilot blew a zero and explained he had an old football injury. He walked with a limp because his knee was stiff from the flight. The passenger was mortified as the entire plane glared at him, and the flight was delayed an hour. The pilot made a joke about it over the intercom. 40. An impatient thrill-seeker called 911 from the very top of a roller coaster. He screamed that the ride was broken, and he was stranded in the sky. He told the operator he had been stuck on the lift hill for 30 seconds. The ride had simply stopped to let another train clear the station below. The operator told him to put his phone away before he dropped it. The ride started moving again while he was still complaining. He screamed all the way down the first drop. He was banned from the park for using a phone on the ride. 41. A confident tourist in a rented Jeep called 911 from the beach in a panic. He was screaming that a gang of thieves had stolen his massive vehicle while he walked. He told the dispatcher he parked right on the hard sand to get a really good picture. He went for a long walk and came back to find nothing there but water. The dispatcher asked if he checked the tide charts for that day at all. The man saw the roof of his Jeep bobbing in the waves. He watched the ocean swallow his deposit money. The tow truck driver laughed until he cried. 42. A terrified hotel guest locked himself in the bathroom and dialed 911 immediately. He whispered that a violent intruder had trashed his room while he was sleeping. He saw clothes thrown everywhere and weird messages written on the mirror in red lipstick. Police arrived and checked the security cameras in the hallway to find the suspect. They saw the man sleepwalking into the hall and fighting a potted plant. He had returned to the room and fought his own suitcase. The man watched the footage in total silence. He paid for the broken lamp and left early. 43. A furious traveler stood at the check-in counter and called the police for help immediately. She screamed that the airline was discriminating against her disability and violating her rights. She demanded an officer force the pilot to let her board the plane right now. The dispatcher asked what kind of medical equipment she had with her at the gate. The woman pointed to a giant peacock on a leash standing next to her suitcase. She claimed the bird was for emotional support and needed its own seat. The peacock screeched and spread its feathers wide. The police told her to rent a car and drive. 44. An exhausted tourist called the police from the sidewalk outside a famous art museum. He was shouting that security guards had assaulted him and thrown him out for no reason. He told the operator he just wanted to sit down for a minute to rest his legs. He had sat directly on a 17th century chair behind a velvet rope. The chair cracked under his weight, and the guards grabbed him instantly to stop the damage. The man argued that chairs are made for sitting and not for looking. He is now banned from every museum in the city. 45. A panicked flyer called 911 from the curb of the wrong airport entirely. He realized he was at Dulles, but his flight was leaving from Reagan in 30 minutes. He demanded a police escort with sirens to blast through the heavy city traffic. He told the dispatcher it was a matter of national security that he made his flight. The dispatcher explained that being stupid is not a police emergency or a crime. The man offered to pay them $1,000 cash for the ride. The police declined and told him to book a later flight. He missed his vacation completely. 46. A frugal traveler driving near the Canadian border called 911 in a total panic. He was not injured, but he was terrified of his phone bill going up. He screamed at the operator asking how to turn off data roaming immediately on his phone. He saw a text message saying welcome to Canada and thought he was bankrupt. The operator told him to pull over safely and check his settings menu. The man refused to hang up until the operator guided him through the steps. He saved $5 on roaming charges but got a ticket for distracted driving. 47. A drunk vacationer called 911 while lying on the floor of a stranger's kitchen. He groaned that he had fallen from the sky and broken his leg in 3 places. He had lost the key to his rental and tried to climb on the roof. He thought he could crawl through the skylight like a movie spy to get inside. The glass shattered instantly and he fell 12 feet onto a granite island. The police found him covered in glass and holding a bag of ice. He was actually in the wrong house entirely and was arrested. 48. A confused traveler called 911 from her hotel room with the curtains drawn tight. She whispered that the sun had vanished and the apocalypse was starting right now. She told the operator it was pitch black outside at only 4 in the afternoon. She had flown from California to London in the middle of winter and lost track. The operator explained that the sun sets early in the northern hemisphere during this season. The woman refused to believe that time zones worked that way at all. She stayed in her room, waiting for the end of the world. 49. A hitchhiker in the passenger seat of a truck quietly dialed 911 for help. He whispered that he was being held hostage by a maniac driver on the highway. The dispatcher asked if the driver had a weapon or was threatening him with violence. The hitchhiker said the driver had been talking about his divorce for 3 hours straight. He claimed the boredom was literally killing him and he needed an escape immediately. The dispatcher told him to ask the driver to pull over soon. The hitchhiker jumped out at the next red light and ran away. And there you have it, absolute proof that you can buy a plane ticket, but you definitely can't buy common sense. Honestly, after hearing about the guy who fought a bidet and lost, I think we all need a vacation from these people. If this level of stupidity made you feel like a genius, you belong here at BrainFumble. Smash that like button before someone calls 911 to report a missing thumb, and hit subscribe so you never miss the chaos. Now tell me in the comments, which traveler deserves to have their passport revoked immediately? The Bison lady or the deep dish hater? Let me know down below.